This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in Texas with an award-winning author whose stories take readers deep into the shadows of human behavior, hidden secrets, and the fight for survival. Writing under the pen name Elaine Broun, we welcome you, Kimberly, to Consumer News TV.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited.
Let's start off a little bit here. You've earned recognition for your gripping psychological suspense thrillers and your ability to blend emotional depth with heart-pounding tension. When did this passion for the written word first begin for you?
For me, it was growing up in Latin America, where history is in every corner. So we were always going to historical sites and going to, villages and little towns that just had buildings back to the 10th century or whatever. And we would be exploring all that. And so became obsessed with people and their stories, their background. I wanted to know who they were, and so I developed that love that my father had as well through him, and that was where it all started. And I became an avid reader early on, and so hence when other kids were checking out little mindless books, I was a young kid checking out autobiographies, which the librarians used to think it was absolutely amazing. But it was because I wanted to know what made that person become the person they became. And so when I got to writing my book, it was an easy transition. So because there's such a historical base to it, that I was passionate about writing it.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
quite honestly, sounds like you were kind of a deep thinker for a kid. You were interested in people. Every location you went to probably seemed like a storybook right in
Yes.
your head. You were a wife, mother of four, and a grandmother. Your life experiences have taken you across multiple countries and cultures, fueling a lifelong fascination with people, history, and the hidden truths that shape our lives. Have those
Yes.
experiences influence the characters, the settings, and even the themes that appear in your novels today?
Absolutely. One thing, it took writing the first book to realize why I was drawn to the psychological thriller type category. And that is where I will remain. That will be my genre. But the story is based, now I can say it's based on my own family experience. Whereas when I first wrote it, we were still living in relative anonymity, hence why I went with the pen name and everything. But when we were living in Uruguay, my father discovered he had an infiltrated Tupamaru terrorist in his company. And so, with the advice of the lawyers, they observed him to find out where he had his hands in things because they needed to be able to correct it and appease the clients so they wouldn't lose them because it's a trust factor. Once they had everything on him, my father set up a sting through the police to catch him. So that angered the Tupamaros because it outed one of their guerrillas and made him useless to them once he's known. And shortly after that, we received a death sentence on our family. So then the story is rounded with history, it's rounded with the background. I wanted everyone to really be able to immerse themselves in the book and be able to picture it as if they were present in that moment, experiencing all the feelings we did. And that I think I hit the nail on that one. According to all the feedback
Yep.
and all the interview requests and things like that, I'm I'm very proud of it because for the longest time, my entire childhood, we weren't allowed to talk about it ever,
Yep.
not even between us for security purposes, because we were warned by the military and the CIA that they would be sending factions behind us to try and find us to finish the job.
Finish the job. You should be proud of it. There is no
Yeah,
doubt about it. I mean, many
yeah,
of your stories explore obsession, survival, and the
yes.
secrets people keep. Why are you drawn to these particular aspects of human behavior, would you say?
Because it is absolutely fascinating because you wonder the root of it goes back to what makes a person change when you hold a newborn baby in your hands and you look at the innocence. You wonder what life experiences, what did they go through that changed their mental game. um, Same thing with the Tupamaros. They started off as a faction that was to help the underdog, um, because of all that was going on in Uruguay. And especially what people don't realize is that once the war was over, all the meat packing plants and everything shut down and people were out of work. And so there was, of course, corruption in the government and everything. So it was their way of helping, and they were kind of the Robin Hood of their times. But then it morphed into a violent faction. So you want to know why, and that was, I had to do a lot of studying. So the book wasn't an overnight thing. For 5 years, I
Yeah,
interviewed consistently the family, mainly the parents after a while. And then I read everything I could about the foundation of the Tupamaros and the climate and everything because I wanted to get it right. Yeah.
interesting. I mean, these are aspects of our life, holding life at the beginning stage. You're experiencing that right now. Your
Yes.
work has earned numerous honors, including Gold Literacy Titan Awards for both of your novels. So let's
Yes.
begin with that tale of an imperial pig, Carrasco 67. Let's touch on that again. When this idea came about, what sparked you to actually say, okay, I have to write about this?
Um, I I was very bothered throughout my childhood because we had to always be protective, but yet we couldn't talk about it. So it played mind games on me. And I would bring up the subject and I would get shut down because um,
Hmm.
my father really received the worst end of it all. He had some major kidnapping attempts where he was literally running for his life. And so I wanted I wanted the story told. So I finally spoke with my mother when I was around 16. I said, I want to write this. And she said, I would love for you to do that. She goes, but now's not the time, meaning it's too soon. But she did finish and said, people will never know who we are, but I want them to know our story. And luckily, the year before she passed away, the book was published. So I was able to get a copy of it in her hands. She was able to read it. And
Wow.
she was just absolutely moved by it. And it was a joy to me to give that to her. And I let her know I will work my entire life to try and get her second dream. And that was getting it to film. And so I'm earnestly working on that right now. And
Wow.
so I have a media publicist that went to the Cannes Film Festival recently. So we are, uh, toying with that right
Yep.
now, and hopefully something will come of it.
That is
And
exciting. I mean, obviously, your mother got to read the book.
mhm,
Your father was basically revealed all that he went through in that way. And now maybe your children will be able to see it on the
yes,
screen. That would be exciting. I mean, the
and
story is set against the backdrop of political unrest and terrorism in Uruguay. What
Yes.
inspired you to place Peter Gray's story in this particular time and location? And as you touched on, how much historical research went into creating that novel?
The historical research was immense, because when I went through this, uh, we were children. So I have a bit of an eidetic memory. So that was one of the key things that helped me. I mean, I can still remember, I can describe the curtains in my room, everything. It's bizarre, but it worked in my benefit for writing this. But as far as Peter and the story, I wanted it to be absolutely 100% how it happened with what I was allowed to say. There were several storylines and that I was not allowed to touch on or include because it was too identifying. And
Wow.
so those were left out. And eventually, I will include some of it because I really think at this point,
Yep.
the the fear of retaliation has most likely
Sure.
passed with the
Exactly.
political time has passed, the climate's changed.
Just like
So
your mom said, now is not the time. Eventually, there's going to be another time when you're going to release even more information because it won't be a situation. Peter Gray begins as a successful, a charismatic executive, living what probably many would consider an ideal life. What did you want readers to learn from the challenges he faces when everything is suddenly turned upside down?
my father came across as, and he is to this day, he's about to turn 94. He was the consummate gentleman, and he was absolutely mentally brilliant, um, ahead of his time. That's why he achieved so much so young, and it was unheard of. And he was working with, I won't mention the names, but it was one of the two top international accounting firms. And he was running the whole thing in Uruguay for all of Uruguay. And that was just unheard of. And
Hmm.
so he was from cradle, he was speaking three languages. So he didn't know one better than the other. He spoke all three of them without an accent. Uh, that made him so beyond marketable as well. And people were drawn to him. They liked him. Whenever he left a job, there would be people that were crying. It was just amazing because he treated the janitor the same as he treated the president of the company. He never treated anyone less. To him, everyone had value. Everyone was a valuable human being.
To have
Yeah,
somebody
but
who is so brilliant, smart, and yet humble at the same time across the
exactly.
board. It seems the tone of the book is that danger can be hidden in plain sight and that evil has eyes everywhere. What
Yes.
message do you hope readers take away about trust, security, and resilience after finishing your book?
And that was what I was going to answer you about, Peter, was the fact that even though he was that consummate gentleman, he was and is absolutely the bravest person, even in the middle of the greatest fear. Um, he didn't sit idly. Uh, he had been in the Brazilian army as well, so he knew his way around guns. And Dan Mitrione was the CIA operative that was working in Uruguay at the time, teaching counterinsurgency techniques to interrogate prisoners. And he had spoken at one of the events, the business events. And so my father sought him out. And he was the one that began supplying armament to my father in the beginning and set up the police protection and everything. So he just didn't sit back. He knew how grave it was, and he couldn't guarantee that we would be safe at every moment. And he wanted to be able to have some tangible thing, which was a gun, to be able to protect the family. So eventually, between him and Dan, even though we had police officers in our home, surrounding our home, on top of our home, uh, we he still ended up having a gun in every room of the house so that the kids wouldn't see one on him, but yet he was within reach of one if needed. And so we had a lot of very sobering, frank conversations. And as things became progressively intense, um, they became even more opening. He didn't hide things from us. He taught us how to be strong, how to be mentally aware of our surroundings. He taught us not to antagonize anyone if we were to be caught, because it came a time that he had to talk to us about potential kidnapping. That's a hard lesson to teach your child, what to do if you're kidnapped.
That is a level of preparedness that most kids don't have. And honestly, that's got to be something very intense to live through.
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about your recent book. Let Me Go combines domestic suspense, psychological thrills, and emotional drama. Did this story evolve or just kind of pop in your head before you actually put pen to paper?
There is a story behind it. I have an acquaintance that has a horrific story, and I am not being allowed to write it yet because the circumstances aren't right and in alignment, and one day I will. But what I did take away that I wanted was I wanted to write the one storyline about obsession and control, because that is one of the key things she was experiencing. And so I did get that idea from a true story. And I probably will always do that. I will pick something because that's what makes it interesting. Like I said about learning about people and their backgrounds, it is fascinating what we don't realize the everyday person goes through. So I did have that. And then my creativity, in the sense, I always, as a child and growing up, always had all these stories running through my head, so much so that I would keep a book by the bed because I would get some wacko dreams, and I would wake up and I would scribble down the scene that I dreamt about because I didn't know how I was going to use it, but I was going to find a way to write something that included that. And so I have a lot of those. And this book was absolute blast to write. And
a lot of information, like you said, a personal story lies behind it, and who knows if that'll come out in the future. And Let Me Go, the protagonist mistakes Cain's possessiveness for love and protection. What inspired you to explore the fine line between devotion and control, and why is that theme important in this story, would you say?
Because I want people to know that no matter what situation you're in, if you get to the point that you figure it out and you see that you're in a messy situation, that no person has to remain in that situation. They have the ability to walk away. And that is one thing. In this story, obviously, to add more drama, I had her running away. But the point I wanted to make was the fact that you can break away. You can put yourself first. You can be strong. So that was where that angle went from.
I think you definitely did that. I mean, as Cain's behavior becomes increasingly manipulative and abusive, I mean, the readers witness the protagonist's journey from trust to survival. I mean, obviously, you conveyed how to recognize a toxic relationship and maybe even find the strength to escape. Your work has received significant recognition, including multiple literary awards and currently an Author of the Year nomination. What has that recognition meant to you personally and professionally?
It's validating, is first of all, you know, I when you are a new author, uh, you're your own worst critic. And so you are constantly over analyzing what you've written, um, if it will interest people, how will it be received, those sorts of things. And so when you receive these awards by peers, by like for the Author of the Year, I was nominated last year and this year as well. So back to back, that's an enormous deal,
Yep.
and it it gives you that fuel to go on. People don't realize how much a simple review from a book you've read, if you'll take 2 minutes, you can write a sentence, but that is what drives an author and gives them that fuel to keep going, because it's a lot of nights behind a keyboard, uh,
Yep.
writing these things. And for me, I probably take longer than the normal person. And it's because I am a bit of a type A personality. I don't want to put out sloppy work, or, I want
Yep.
it to be a tight story that isn't weak in different areas. So
Yep.
I edit and edit my stories before I send it to a real editor.
I mean, you're a creature of details. You
Yes.
know the details and you share them with everyone. Kimberly, as a wife, a mother of four, grandmother, and successful author, you've always been fascinated by people, history, and hidden truths. Will those subjects continue to inspire your storytelling, not only today, but hopefully more so in the future, even?
Absolutely. Because there is nothing more interesting than reading about people and the different personalities, the different fractured personalities. Those make extremely interesting reads. And I'm not trying to write books that are drama and depressing in the sense that, it's like visiting a psychologist. That's not what I'm wanting. I do want pure entertainment, but to get those quirky stories, the person has to be fragmented in some way, or some character in the storyline, um, and it just makes it, uh, you know, an interesting read. Bottom line, that to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think you're going to continue. It sounds like you enjoy your stories just as much as the readers do. You love being entertained by these stories. They fascinate you, and you're just passing off the story to the next generation, really. I am happy that we validated you, because I think that's important, that these authors, these stories get out there, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Well,
Viewers,
thank
let's
you.
take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is her website. On the website, you can find both of her books that explore terrorism, obsession, manipulation, courage, and really the resilience of the human spirit, reminding us that some of the greatest battles are fought not only against external threats, but also against fear, manipulation, and the hidden forces that shape all of our lives. Once again, that is Elaine Broun, award-winning author on The Best of the Nation. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and if you don't know, now you know.